Yeah, so the reason that we even have dopamine is to reinforce behaviors that keep us alive, like eating, sleeping, and having sex with people. It feels good because we need to do those things to live. And that is how like our brain reinforces doing those things. So then we keep surviving and keep the species going and all of that. But what happens is alcohol and drugs trigger the same thing. And when you drink, for example, your brain releases endorphins, which make you feel good. And then those endorphins go through your brain and they bind to opioid receptors. And that's what triggers the dopamine release. And there's a much bigger burst of dopamine from drugs and alcohol than anything else. So your brain sees that and it's like, wow, if food feels this good, and I know food's important, but alcohol feels like 10 times better than that. Alcohol must be super important. And then your brain thinks like, this is number one. This is the priority now. We have to get this thing. It's so good for us. And on top of that, we form beliefs just through our experiences. Like if I'm stressed, alcohol helps me feel better. So now you have the dopamine forming a memory of something that's happening in your life a lot, and it just keeps you in this weird belief system that you need alcohol, like to survive, to live a good life. And yeah, not everyone's going to have that same burst. Like for people, it's going to be different. Like if someone doesn't really like alcohol, but they're addicted to some other drug, alcohol doesn't have a huge burst of dopamine for them. So every brain is different. And then on top of that, like when you drink, like there are some people that slowly develop a problem with alcohol over years, and some people are more susceptible to alcohol changing their reward system. And as it changes the reward system, it releases more and more dopamine and gets the brain to believe it's important. And other people don't have that change. So they just feel like alcohol's fine, like it's nice, and they move on with their life. But yeah, and all of that, I think I'll stop there. But
something that I've heard that's common in addicts is that they actually have less receptors for dopamine. And when they first use something that releases dopamine, it's like the brain, for the first time, actually gets like a good amount of dopamine, and then it just latches onto it like, right, that's it. That's how I'm getting that, because I need that. I need that on a physiological level. I need that burst of dopamine for the body to feel okay. So then it grabs onto it. But then as you keep doing it, and obviously you're becoming dependent on that source, and the more you do it, the dopamine receptors actually diminish. So the few dopamine receptors you already had becomes less and less as you already do it. And it's kind of why, I could be wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like why addiction is, and many things in the world are like, it's like, you know, it's like I don't know what sweets or candy you have there, but you know, when they've got a coating on it and you suck on it for a couple of minutes, and then all the sugary stuff's gone and you're sucking on this tasteless thing, you know what I mean? And it's like every time you go back for, you know, the first time it tastes like that and you keep going back and it's just like chewing the chewed. You're never ever getting that back because you actually can't you're physiologically changed now and you can't have that anymore.
yeah, that is completely correct, all of that. So not everybody has the same amount of dopamine receptors or like the same amount of serotonin. So some people are more prone to depression, and that could be a chemical thing. So we all have different amounts of everything going on in our body. We're not all the same. And for people that have lower levels of dopamine receptors, they feel like less good. And that might affect them as depression, something like that. And when they drink or use whatever drug they enjoy, all of a sudden their brain's like, whoa, like, here we go. And as you abuse it, you're right. Like your brain starts to believe like this, you know, this is too much. So it reduces the amount of receptors that you have. So then you're doing the same amount, but you're not getting the same burst. And that's a part of tolerance. And that's why we have to keep doing more and more. Like, that's why I had to make that second fake Cosmo, because the first one was good, but like it wasn't as good, you know? But the second one, that one was going to be really good. And yeah, it just changes the brain, and it like makes alcohol worse or drugs worse, but we still think like we really need it. So we just do more and more and more and more often. But yeah, that's a big part of the genetic component, like what you have to start with. And that has a huge impact, because if you struggle to feel happy or to feel pleasure, then you're more susceptible to abusing something that makes you feel really good.